Hands where I can see them. You filthy thief. Officer Darren McKinley's voice thundered, eyes blazing with fury. Kendra Wyatt barely had time to react before she was slammed face first onto the scorching asphalt, cuffs snapping tightly around her wrists. Confused and scared, she barely caught the protests from the growing crowd. That's not her. I saw the woman who robbed the store. It wasn't Kendra, someone shouted, but McKinley didn't flinch. Move along, or you're next, he snarled, yanking Kendra roughly to her feet. Her badge swung on a chain around her neck, her lips split and bleeding, tears blurring her vision. Just an hour ago, she'd been saving lives as a nurse. Now, she was treated like a criminal. The crowd was angry, murmurs rising in waves. She's a nurse. She saved my son this morning, a neighbor shouted. How do you know that? Someone asked. Because I took him to the hospital myself. She's a hero. But McKinley smirked, a twisted grin of control. No one had dared to challenge him before. His badge had been his shield for years. But Kendra was no ordinary victim. And soon, McKinley would learn that his actions had set off a chain of events that would cost him everything. He dragged her toward the patrol car, his grip so harsh Kendra's shoulder cracked painfully. Always the same with your kind. He hissed in her ear, venom dripping from his words. Innocent until we force the truth out of you. Kendra's hands trembled inside the cuffs. What are you saying? She asked, voice weak. You know exactly what I mean, McKinley said darkly, opening the back door. Playing the victim while causing trouble. Nearby, a woman in a housecoat and cigarette sneered from behind police tape. She must have done something. Why else would they arrest her? Not all of them are saints. Shut up, a young woman yelled back. She cared for my grandmother. Don't disrespect her. Ignoring the protests, McKinley slammed Kendra into the car and barked. She's being charged with obstruction of justice and resisting arrest. The crowd erupted. That's illegal, a teenager yelled, recording everything on his phone that McKinley sneered. Let's see how that works out in court. The cruiser sped away with horns blaring and shouts following them. They could see the precinct. Kendra was thrown onto a cold metal bench, handcuffed and ignored for nearly an hour. When a young officer finally approached to process her, he barely looked up. Full name? He asked. Kendra Wyatt. I want to make my call, she said quietly, clinging to dignity. Call? Not your call. McKinley interrupted from behind, smirking. This isn't a movie. You'll talk when I say. The officer looked down and signed paperwork without protest. A large guard suddenly appeared and led Kendra to a freezing cell. No windows, no clock, no mercy. Can I call my daughter? She asked before the door slammed shut. Worry about the judge, not your brat, the guard chuckled. The cold seeped in her bones. No explanation, no lawyer, no rights read. Just silence and hopelessness. She lay on the hard concrete, reliving the day's events, the pain, the fear, the injustice. Her daughter's sleeping face haunted her mind, a fragile beacon of hope in the darkness. Morning came with a harsh knock. Up, you're seeing the judge. Kendra rose, wrists raw and swollen, stomach empty. The orange jumpsuit swallowed her, stripping away her humanity. The walk to the courtroom was slow and silent, her shackles heavy on her ankles. Inside, Officer McKinley sat beside the prosecutor, smug and confident, clutching a report filled with vague, empty legal jargon, suspicious behavior, passive resistance, defiant attitude. But then the courtroom doors opened. Kendra's heart stopped. Judge Robert Henley sat behind the bench, stern, composed, glasses perched on his nose. 2 years ago, Kendra had saved his life during a code blue at the hospital. He remembered her clearly, his eyes flickering with surprise as recognition dawned. The murmurs quieted as the clerk announced, Case number 2481, the state versus Kendra Wyatt. Henley looked at Kendra directly. Ms. Wyatt, were you informed why you're here? Kendra shook her head, voice barely audible. No, Your Honor. Were you allowed to make your legal call? No. Were your rights read to you at the time of arrest? No. Silence filled the room. The prosecutor glanced nervously at McKinley, who avoided eye contact. Officer McKinley approached the bench, Henley ordered sharply. The courtroom held its breath. Henley scanned the report. There's no mention of rights being read. No specific reason for arrest. The defendant says she was denied her call. McKinley muttered. She was evasive, uncooperative. I had sufficient grounds. Henley raised an eyebrow. What was the description of the suspect? African-American woman, dark shirt, between 20 and 40 years old, driving an old vehicle. Henley clicked his tongue. How many women fit that description within a 3-mile radius? Before McKinley could answer, the courtroom doors burst open with a sharp bang. Everyone turned as a tall, imposing man in a Navy uniform stepped in. Commander Harold Greene, a respected officer with silver insignia gleaming on his chest. His face was grave, his gaze fierce. McKinley's confident smirk vanished. Greene's eyes landed on Kendra. She froze. She recognized him instantly. Her adoptive father, the man who had raised her since she was 8, who had cared for her in foster homes, who had cheered her nursing graduation, and now stood before her as a powerful defender. He approached the judge. Your Honor, I have just learned of this arrest through unofficial channels. I request immediate intervention as Kendra Wyatt's superior officer and provisional legal representative. The prosecutor stammered, Sir, this is highly irregular. Is arresting an innocent woman without evidence standard procedure? Greene interrupted, calm but commanding. Henley nodded. I accept your intervention. Proceed, Commander. Greene opened a folder, revealing surveillance footage, records, and photographs. The suspect was arrested elsewhere this morning, Greene explained. There is no evidence linking Ms. Wyatt to this crime. She's a registered nurse with an impeccable record and an active community member. He fixed McKinley with a cold stare. And you, officer, have committed an egregious abuse of power. McKinley swallowed hard. The courtroom buzzed with shock that Kendra's chest tightened. What would come next? Would justice finally be served? Or would this be just another battle in a long war? Kendra stood frozen as Judge Henley slammed the file shut. Enough. I order the immediate release of the defendant, he declared sharply. Officer McKinley stepped back. The prosecutor lowered his head, but Kendra still struggled to believe this was real. Greene approached her, his voice gentle. Let's go home, sweetheart. You're not alone anymore. Yet something inside Kendra had shifted. She was no longer a victim, but a witness, soon to become a voice that could not be silenced. The guard quietly removed her handcuffs with a dry click that echoed through the courtroom. Kendra looked at her wrists, but it wasn't the pain that broke her. It was when her father, Commander Harold Greene, hugged her tightly, not as an officer, but as a father who had seen his daughter humiliated by a system meant to protect her. Tears came freely as she buried her face in his chest. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was late. You should never have gone through this. The room was silent except for Kendra's sobs, each one releasing years of pain and anger. Greene turned to the bench, calm but firm. Your Honor, I request an immediate arrest warrant for Officer Darren McKinley for unlawful detention and abuse of authority. Henley nodded. Order approved. Officer McKinley, you are formally arrested. McKinley protested, but 2 officers cuffed him, the same shackles he used on Kendra. Greene whispered, No, Darren. This is justice. Judge Henley approached Kendra, grateful. Ms. Wyatt, you saved my life that day at the hospital. Today, you remind me why I wear this robe. He embraced her briefly. Thank you for reminding us all of what one person is worth. Weeks later, McKinley was dismissed and faced charges under house arrest. Kendra returned to nursing, rejecting fame and focusing on her daughter and work. Her badge read, Kendra Wyatt, registered nurse, and beneath it, handwritten, never again invisible.